Morning.
Afternoon.
Yeah, actually.
It's later today.
It is later today. So.
And it's a different day.
Yeah, this is Monday. Mm-hmm. Seems how we kind of just totally blew off yesterday.
We had stuff to do, peeps. Yeah. It's like.
We were like, what was it? It was probably like 8 o'clock. You're like, you said,
we didn't do our thing.
So.
Where do we begin week 3?
Week 3. Episode 3, season 3.
We've covered lots of stuff. Last week we covered education.
Yeah.
The week prior to that we were covering, at the time, the hot piece of the minute, which was the
Maui
stuff.
Which
boy, that's been wait 5 minutes and things change.
And normal people are starting to see it more, and that almost goes back to, because we were talking about this morning, the whole thing with the Mandela effect. Mm-hmm. And everybody's like, oh, the Mandela effect. And we see the Mandela effect a little bit differently. I had to explain it to a friend this morning. So the Smith-Mundt Act, which actually has prohibited the government from propagandizing the American public for a long time, that was repealed
during Obama's
time. And so the government could actually start propagandizing the American people.
Isn't that so nice?
And part of what propaganda's ultimate goal, and Hitler did this, was that 2 + 2 would equal 5.
Mm-hmm.
But the first thing that you have to do is you have to de-pattern people from their normal ways of thinking.
Yeah.
And so you have to open them up to, man, am I crazy?
Well, that's what I talked about last week and the week before, is that if they can get us, generalization of people, to buy into the stupid crap that they feed us and that they make us think happened. And I will always go back to like the little things. It was the little things on Facebook. You could take this quiz, and do you remember if were there really 4 Rice Krispie guys or 3 Rice Krispie guys? Or was there a set of grapes in Fruit of the Loom or not? And
or a cornucopia.
We used to laugh and go, hi, and then we would think, oh yeah, weird. Maybe it really wasn't that way. If we can buy into those things, they can start deleting, and they are, history, actual factual history, and they'll make us think we're crazy, or they're just going to be like, no, that's not really the way it is. And what brought the whole thing up again is because, sadly, the Price is Right guy, Bob Barker, passed away. And I thought it, never said it. Our friend said it, and 4 other people I know have thought it and said it. I thought he died like 4 years ago.
Yeah, I thought I remember seeing articles and.
That's why Drew Carey took over Price is Right. And so it was like, see, they just make you think you're a cuckoo head.
And so the line behind the Mandela effect is no, there's alternate realities and all these things. Well, you can buy that, or you can buy that, I don't know, that your government is lying to you, or that there are people that are trying to make you think that you're crazy. Because if they can get you to buy into something dumb like that, not saying that it goes either way, but just bringing up that question and having you go, can I trust my own?
Yeah.
Well, if they can do it with that, then they can sell you on Joe Biden as a legitimate president.
Yeah. Which Joe is this? Which Joe is this one?
Or that Joe Biden is brilliant. When if you were my age, I'm 50, Joe Biden was literally, and this is going to age me, but I'm already aged, as you can see.
Santa Claus.
But it's going to age me. Joe Biden was the Democrats' version of Dan Quayle, but worse. He was a
warmongering, angry freak in the 70s.
But Joe Biden, you have to understand, that's who he was, yes. But Joe Biden's perception was that he was the dude that always stuck his foot in his mouth. And he, like Dan Quayle would come out and say stupid stuff. Joe Biden would say the things that you're not supposed to say, and
Yeah.
he would say them out in front of people. And I mean, I'm not going to repeat the stuff he said about black people. I'm not going to. But if you
Yeah.
can go find some of those things, you'll be really surprised at who this guy really is. And yet he's
Yeah.
touted as this, oh my God, he's such a
It's
good.
like I said last week, you have to know your
yuck.
history.
Yeah.
We've always been told that you have to know where you come from to know where you're going. People, you have to know your history, the real factual. Go find the books that were written
Yeah, go to your library.
a long time ago before public education got involved, and know your history for what's going on today.
Yeah.
Because if you can't figure it out for today, tomorrow and beyond is going to be helpless and hopeless.
And so, we ran into that.
Yeah.
That was kind of a follow on from the Maui, what we
Yeah.
talked about with Maui. But I think what we kind of wanted to cover today was, and I'll couch it real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that Darby and I are about, people will look at us and they look at some of the things we do and they go, well, you guys are anti-establishment, blah, 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 And we're like, no, we're very...
Oh, no.
We're very pro-American, extremely pro-American,
Mm-hmm.
but we're pro-America the way it was founded, not this kind of degraded, degenerated,
Yeah.
upside down gobbledygook that we see now. And we've talked in other shows about continuity of government. And if you understand what continuity of government is, it's when your country is attacked, it's your country's ability to continue operating, attacked or a natural disaster or things aren't going right, but it's the government's capability of continuing during all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the way the founders viewed the government, we the people are the source of the power. And so if you're going to have continuity of government, the we the people portion has to maintain its strength.
Mm-hmm.
And so teaching our kids, that's the entire idea about the schools, teaching our kids to be Americans, like not this, I hate to say this, but this garbage that we see in our generation, the generations now, the generations, even the generation right before us, things had started to really fall apart. We're looking back at how did this country get founded? What was that first 100 years like?
Yeah.
What was, and not all the bad parts, but there was a lot of things that made America very special.
Mm-hmm.
Our ideas about freedom, our ideas about electing your own officials, our ideas about having checks and balances and power not being all congealed into one top-down place. And so we have a lot of work to do. And so today, part of continuity of government for the average individual family
Is local.
it's local. Yeah, national defense is local. It's literally starts in your family, at your own household. And
So for the last, local is an actual thing. It's 100 miles. So we're going to go into some education. Local means your neighbor, but local in the perimeter of your goods and resources.
agriculture.
Within 100 miles is considered local. So if you are getting, we'll say, raw honey, local honey is within 100 miles of where you stand because your pollen and your agriculture and the plants and your atmosphere, your area should all be relatively, unless you're like urban city,
Yeah.
your local is pretty much, if you go 100 miles one direction and 100 miles the other direction, it's going to be relatively the same what you're dealing with weather-wise, climate, blah, 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 blah. So that also applies to food resource, beef, pork, poultry, vegetables, anything. And so for a long time, many, many years, I will say probably the first time I really heard it, local, support local, shop local, blah, 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 was probably in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s, early 2000s, and they really, really pushed. And I say there was a side of the platform that was super duper, liberal, super duper, local is everything. And you were kind of like the tree hugging hippie, anti-establishment people, hated this, hated that, were, free loving, loved everything. You were the guys that shopped at your local mom and pop, only went to the food co-ops and only went to Whole Foods and only did this. And we made fun of you at a constant because
Oh
you were
my
just the
God.
green weenie granola eating freak jobs that just thought you were hoity-toity and better than everybody else, and your shit was too expensive and we weren't going to deal with it. Well, fast forward, and I'm going to say, as of recently for us,
This would be
within
the last 10,
10
years.
years,
Yeah.
is that I literally had to sit down and go, they're onto something.
Yeah.
Not so much their ideology as my shit doesn't stink and I'm going to look down upon you. You see those men? You see the meme with a guy who's, I think he's like a prince, and he's standing and he's got his 4 little people behind him, and they always say like, me, I'm the person that drinks, or I buy my eggs
God,
from the
yeah.
local egg person, looking at the people who buy their eggs from the grocery store. I mean, this meme is on everything. And that's how we looked at it, and we now have to look at it as, can you trust your next door neighbor? But that's a different subject. We'll get into
You
that.
can trust. Let's put it this way: I can go and I can visit my next door neighbor. If my next door neighbor poisons me
Yes.
with a bad product, I can actually go talk to my next door neighbor and go, "Hey, man, this isn't right." Corporations that are doing
That's
this
the
from
deal.
100 to 500 to 1,000 to 1,500 miles away, who have massive legal departments and insurance and everything else, and who also, like what we talked about, I think last week we got into this, who are actually in bed with the regulatory agencies. They own the regulatory agencies that police them. They own them. So if they poison me or my family, or they're
What do you do about
starting
it?
to put additives,
You're going against
Yeah.
multi-trillion-dollar conglomerates that have every lawyer in every facet to just basically, again, make you crazy. So the idea is,
Yeah.
again, 100 miles, you can trust within 100 miles that the rancher down the street who's growing, they're not planting seeds and boop, a cow popped up.
Yeah.
I'd be all over
Cow
that.
seeds.
But the
Hey, yeah.
cow eggs. Anyways, I'll show that picture on our comments.
Oh my God.
But they're raising their own cattle. Or that the husband and wife and their 2 kids who have pigs on their farm, they're raising pigs and they're butchering them.
Mm-hmm.
You can trust that they're probably doing things a whole lot safer. And isn't it funny
you
that
do have to look into it, but yeah.
I'm not going to say things are unregulated, but things that are so not like somebody's thumb is all over them every second and following this, and every nook and cranny has to be A, B, and C. That to me is more trustworthy of food. We'll stick to the food thing than running down to the grocery store. So here's a little backstory. We live in a small town, USA, and we have a local meat store that sells. They're considered the local butcher shop.
Yeah.
And you go, they have some produce there, and they have a lot of meat, mainly their beef. They do carry poultry, not a whole lot of pork, but long story short, we shopped there because we felt good about the fact that I was not going to go shop at Walmart and buy meat at Walmart or meat at the large grocery store, because you don't know where that meat is coming from. And
and just as I'm sorry, but as a
Go
real
ahead.
quick side, we want to support local people.
yes,
And
that's the whole point.
we want to support local people, and we do trust the people that are close to us, but
Yeah. So we didn't want to, like I said, we chose not to shop at Costco, even though it's a great deal, Sam's Club, great deal, Walmart, a little cheaper, or, your local grocery store that buys their beef in bulk, because you don't know where your beef is coming from. Literally. And it's hard to do it when you have chuck roast and pork loin or beef loin and all these things, but especially when it comes down to your ground beef or your ground chuck, the research is there, go look it up. But if you're buying lots of ground beef in bulk, especially in those big tubes, you don't know how many cows and where those cows are coming from that are all mishmashed together and what you're getting.
yeah.
And the thing is, they could be getting the cows from overseas, because FDA and USDA regulation has changed as of the last 5 years, that you could raise your beef cow in Vietnam. No offense to the poor Vietnamese people, but you could raise it over there. They can do however, they don't have to follow the same regulations that we're supposed to do over here. And then some of your cow parts come from the cows in Vietnam. Some of the cows come from Thailand. Some come from Ethiopia. And they all come in big freezer packs, and they send it to one. Remember I talked about dairy? They send it to one processing plant, and they put it all together, and then it's marked because it's processed here. Okay, I take that back. It's not processed here. It's processed there, packaged here, and then it's sent to where it's supposed to go. You don't know.
Locally, yeah, in the United
But
States.
I know that.
But then they'll mark it as made.
Product of USA. We have a beef gentleman and his family. Lovely. Their family's been doing it for generations. It stopped with his father.
Yeah.
Because his dad, back in the 50s and 60s, it was hard to do that back then in this area. So his dad went and got a different job. Well, now they have taken back over that process, and they are now raising beef cattle. And you can drive down the road and you see them all in the pasture on the corner where their thing is, and you will know that in 3 to 6 months that little black cow over there is going to be on my dinner table because it's raised locally. Now, the only thing that sucks is for this state, and I'm not sure if it's like this in every state has different regulation. You cannot raise your beef and package your beef in the same facility.
Yeah.
So they have to take their beef that they raise, they can butcher it here, but then they have to send it to a facility to have it packaged and it's sent back. But at least it's still done all within a relatively small area. So you know where that's coming from. So that's one facet of local. Same thing goes with pork processors. We have a lady who's in a town about 40 miles away that their family raises nothing but organically pasture-raised pigs, and we get our pork from there. And then we have a friend of ours who is getting into, she's not an expert by any means, but boy, she's a go-getter, and she's figuring it out, and she's learned all about how to raise meat birds. And so we will get our chicken from her. And the idea of local is now being taken back by people who are really
local,
truly wanting safe, clean, and keeping your money and keeping these people in business and doing the right thing in a local facet.
And why is that important? Is because in the day and age that we're looking at, and we've talked to you about COVID, we've talked to you about if you watch like the last season, but we've talked a lot about distribution, supply chain. If you want to have a strong family, if you want to have it, and it's the family, then the community, your towns, your cities, your counties. If you want to have a strong body, you can't have a strong body and have shitty cells. You have to have healthy cells. Those healthy cells make healthy organs. The healthy organs make strong bones and muscle and give you overall health. Well, the same goes for a country. And so we are not going to ever have a strong America. We're not going to have a healthy America if the cells are all like on the verge of being dead. And top-down supply chain mechanisms don't work. If you look at the human body, it's not like there's a big funnel on the top of our head and you pour in all the good stuff and it funnels down through the body. You have to intake, and a lot of the way God builds things. You look at ecosystems, the way He distributes plants. It's distributed in a natural, granular level. And systems are distributed out so that even if you burn down, one forest, you're not killing the entire species of plant because there's different parts of that species of plant that are other places. They're dispersed out. And if you want to have a strong country, that's what continuity of government. There's devolution. Probably people have heard some about devolution. Well, literally, you have to take some of this power and some of this control and some of this supply chain that has only just been top down. That's got to get dispersed out. It has to come from the top and come down to the local and then be dispersed out so that, God forbid, one person who's got a farm, say all their animals get sick, well, you have someplace else that you can go. And that gets us around just natural disaster kind of stuff. But when we're looking at the last 5 years and what we're looking at with fifth generation warfare, some of the foreign influence, some of the weird stuff, no, these are literally things that were programmed. These are literally things that people did on purpose, poisoning the food. There's got to be a reason why there are things that are accepted by the FDA, accepted by the USDA, that's in all of our food that are known poisons.
Oh, yeah.
I
So
mean,
if you
well
look
known.
at our regulations here,
Oh.
especially food, FDA, USDA, which are hand in hand, basically the same
Yeah, very
same
similar
thing. USDA is
function.
really more or less agriculture, but the FDA has stuck their nose in a lot of agriculture stuff too. But lots of regulatory things this side of the pond, which we can factually base and go research and go, we know for a fact this is poison, and if we ingest it, we will be killing ourselves off at a slow pace.
But
That
steady.
the
yeah.
European Union looks at and went, this is crap and it's killing our
yeah,
people.
that's literally
We're
poison.
banning it. And they have.
Yeah.
And you have to go, why is it okay there, but it's not okay here? And so, back to the whole local thing, a lot of issue with local, and I'm not going to say issue, but a lot of the problematic things with local as to why people don't utilize it is, for one, you're told on a constant that it's not safe. It's not safe. And they regulate things so much to the nth degree that a lot of people who would benefit from providing certain foods and resources of things don't, because they're, for one, scared of being fined or taxed or regulated to the gills, and they don't do it well. So access is the main issue. It's not that it's not there. It's the idea of how do I even go? You can't just jump on Google and go local. I mean, you can, but it's more or less you have to dig. Local. Where do I buy local chicken to eat? You know, where do I get my local meat bird? Where can I go buy fresh eggs? Where can I get fresh unpasteurized raw milk? Where can I, and you can find those things, but a lot of people, you have to say it. You can't really, and you know me, I'm just going to say whatever. You can't really jump on your local Facebook group and type in, I'm looking for unpasteurized raw milk, because Facebook will come down and close your Facebook group down because you're not allowed to have unpasteurized. It's against the law. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's against they've decided it's against their law. Not my law.
And you have to understand what is law. And we're about to, I don't know how many people are really understanding of this. We live in kind of a mafia-ocracy. Like when you watch The Godfather or like Goodfellas, and you see how mobs operate, we're literally in that kind of circumstance. So there is, in any community, there's the actual quote-unquote law, and there's law enforcement and da-da-da. Well, what mobs will do is mobs will come in and set up a protection racket, and the protection racket runs like this. Well, golly gee, it'd be a really good thing if you paid me $100 a week so that your windows don't get broken. Because...
Oh, I laugh, but that's legit.
That's
still happening to this day.
Because literally, if you don't pay me that $100, your
It'd
windows...
be a damn shame that all your windows broke out and one of your cows goes missing.
Yeah, all your windows wind up breaking. God damn, why don't you pay me that $100 now? And so people go, okay, well, I hate to say it, but when they started some of these regulatory agencies, they probably had good intent. But before too long, those regulatory agencies were subsumed by people who had lots of money, who were in the industries that were being regulated, and now they are going to make sure that they're closing the doors behind them. And the only way that you are going to have a business that's in the same industry that they are is to kowtow to their rules. Well, their rules are made to make sure that you fail.
Yeah.
And to make sure that you are never, ever going to be a threat to them. And if you don't, your windows are all going to get broken out. Well, laws are passed by the Congress. When I go and I put together a 3-letter agency or a 4-letter agency, and they make internal rules, those rules are policy. Now, if I work for a police department, do I have to follow departmental policy? Yes,
Sure.
I do, because I
choose
to be employed by a police department. But if I don't work for the police department, I don't have to follow internal policy. It's not a law. There's no requirement. And this is what people don't understand is now these same agencies, they'll come out and they'll try to enforce this stuff. And the only reason that they enforce it is because we don't know the law.
Yeah.
And the law, if you go back and you read your Constitution, you are the one in charge, not them.
Mm-hmm.
They are actually a civil servant.
Yeah.
Now we have to understand terms like citizen and those things that a lot of people.
We can get into that whole thing.
We'll have to get into
that
that later on. But a lot of people have been roped into an idea that they have to abide by all this stuff, and it's literally not the case. And so, and there are some legal definitions between what is lawful, and what is lawful is that which is right, and it's codified in law. And law is passed by legislature. It's not passed by an executive department somewhere. No matter
the CEO
how well it's written.
of a large pharmaceutical agency that works with a privateered pseudo medical agency can't come along and claim that we have to do this, that, or the other thing for the good and the betterment of the people and tell us it's law. No, it's you can suggest it till the cows come home.
Yes.
Whether or not I decide to follow your suggestion is my personal right and my personal choice.
Which goes to things like there's lawful, then there's legal, and then there's things like mandates.
Yeah. And
mandates, you have to really dig into the terminology and what the terminology really means. But a lot of people run around, they go, well, this regulation, it mandates this. Well, a mandate, and where you actually find the definition for mandate is in the Masonic legal manuals that are produced for judges, district attorneys, and law enforcement. Masonic.
Repeat that again. What are those produced for?
They're produced for defining words that are used in those legal professions. And I say legal, that's not necessarily lawful. There's a huge difference between what is lawful per the Constitution and per the United States Constitution and state constitutions. There's what is lawful there and what is lawfully passed as law by their legislatures, both federally and at the state level, and then what is legal. And legal is kind of tricky. Legal is actually a way to go around God's law. And it sucks, but that's kind of what it's there for. And then you get into things like mandates. Mandates, if I have a law, if the legislature comes in and says, you can't rob people, and they codify that into a law, then you know what? I can't rob people. And if I do go and rob people, the cop can actually come and stop me.
Yes.
There's a consequence, and it's real because it's lawful. Now, a mandate, if I mandate I'm going to mandate that you have to drop off $100 every week on my front doorstep, and I mandate it, and it's not passed as a law by legislatures, then here's the deal. It only takes effect
if you do it.
If I comply with it. If I comply with it, well then it's lawful because I've complied. But if I go, fuck off, I'm not doing that, that's perfectly lawful as well. Yep. And there's no amount of consequence that they can bring down on you. Now, they have intimidated the living shit out of people for 100 years.
Intimidate.
And that's unfortunately what a lot of our, and this is this roundabout to, we live in a mafia-ocracy.
Yeah.
This, for 100 years, that's what we've lived under, is a lot of big three-letter agencies that act official.
Think about what we have just dealt with in the last 3 years.
Oh, God. No.
especially with the pandemic that we had gone through. Remember, I know it's been so long, and we haven't dealt with any of this in for such a long time.
You mean 20 years ago in 2020?
Yeah.
2021?
Why do you think it was so important to them? And why do you think it was so accepted that the generalized public could go to Walmart and go to Sam's Club and go to Best Buy and go to Costco and go to all these big corporations, as long as you stood within your 6 feet apart and you wore your 15 face diapers, you could go buy new clothes and change and buy new shoes and go do all these things there. But your local rancher, your local food producer, your local apiary, your local herbalist was told to shut their shit down because it was unsafe.
Yep. Why?
Why is Bill Gates buying all the farmland in the United States? It's not because he's all of a sudden decided he wants to play Green Acres and plant everything. Sure, he's planting things, but there are certain places where he is planting certain foods, and please take a few minutes and go look up appeal, and that's all I'm going to say. But most of the things that Bill Gates is buying, most of the farmland that Bill Gates is buying, and you know what, Uncle Gates, come at me, he buys that farmland to let it die.
Yeah.
Not that he's building infrastructure or roads or houses or whatever. He literally buys the farmland to let it die. Why? Because he doesn't want local at all. He wants to sell shares of whatever it is he purchased to communist China. And they own more land mass in our country than any rightful farmer does. You can quote me on that.
And the reason why people go, well, why would they be doing that? Why would they be doing that? You have to wrap and this goes back to some of the first shows we did. You got to wrap your head around we're at war.
Mm-hmm.
There are people around the world that have bought into a philosophy of top-down domination, whether you want to call it communism or Maoism or the New World Order or the Reichswehr or whatever. Their ideologies are all about top-down centralized control. Mm-hmm. And it is the rule of the many by the few. And the few are going to have everything, and the many are going to they're going to own nothing, but they'll be happy.
Oh my God, who was that guy?
Oh my God.
Who was the guy that literally said that? He came out.
Oh, that was Klaus.
Klaus. You will own nothing and you will like it. And there are actual groups of people who are like, okay, that sounds great. Oh my God.
You don't understand.
You are the reason we're where we're at.
And why are they doing that? Okay, well, cows. We're talking about cows, but when you have a big, huge ranch of 10,000, 20,000 head of cattle, and you've got to take them to slaughter, you have to funnel them down to get them into the slaughterhouse.
Yeah, they're not going to go willingly.
And then and you have to trick them into going in there. You got to lead them in there, and then you got to funnel them down so they can fit through the doorway to go in. And that's why Bill Gates is buying up all the land. That's why they're doing the things that they're doing. And
are you talking about population control?
Yes, I am. And we're another 3-letter agency, and you just talked about it, the CDC. And what people don't understand is the CDC is bifurcated. There is actually the CDC that is a government entity, and then there is quasi-government
they're like the IRS. They're private, but they've been contracted and then turned into this falsified thing that has all this power that it really does not have. Yeah. And it's only because we let them have power. If we would just stand up and go, no, I'm sorry, Ronald McDonald, you don't have the right to tell me this, and then they would kind of like bully mentality. They would stop doing what they're doing.
And so it's not new. This happened with the Northwest Railroad Police company, which was what we all think of as the Pinkertons. That was a nickname. Well, the Pinkertons came out and they did what they did to basically control railroad employees back during the time when they were around. And then they made a law so that, and this was I want to say 1890s, they made a law that basically made that private policing function that was illegal. You couldn't do that anymore. And so then they took the exact same idea and then went, well, we're going to federalize it. And it got promoted later as the Bureau of Investigation. And then a year later, it was renamed to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And it literally started out with one guy. And it was to look at very few things. And so it was never congressionally passed, has no congressional mandate, has no underlying constitutional charter, no nothing. It's not. It just is. It just is. And I think there's a lot of probably good people that work at the FBI. But the problem is it just never was done correctly.
Yeah.
It just wasn't. And because it wasn't done correctly, just like a child, if a child doesn't learn things that they're supposed to learn when they're 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, there's a lot of behavior that children do when they're really young that's cute. It's fun. It's like, oh my God, this is so funny, our kid did this and that. But if that kid is doing that when he's 35 years old with a wife and kids and owns guns and fast cars and is acting like he's 2 and 3 years old, well, that ain't fucking funny no more.
No.
That's downright scary. And unfortunately, because so many of these agencies are exactly like that, the CDC was one of those.
The IRS.
The CDC started out as a movement that kind of grew out of virology, and we're now understanding some things about virology that are just...
That's an entirely different show. We'll get into that. But the idea was, I think they were because of whatever... The sole purpose of the CDC was literally, hey, ring, ring, this is such and such general hospital, and somebody's come in, they have just come back from Botswana, and they've got a rash.
Yeah.
And we've never seen this rash before, and we know that you have highly educated and hired doctors and lab people that could look at this and tell us what we need to do because you've done more research than our hospital guy has to get this under control. And that's literally what they were supposed to do. Then the CDC, not mass people in like, where you've watched that movie with Dustin Hoffman where they're in like the damn spacesuits, but they would send a guy and a doctor to come in and they would go to your lab in that hospital, they would take a sample and they would say, this is what we could do to stop it here.
And the other thing you also
contain your person here and it won't spread. They have then turned that entire system into we're just going to be in control of everything, everywhere, all over at any given time, and we are now the gods of all medicine. They're not medical, and you have to do what we say because that's literally what they are.
But that's only one half of it. Literally, there's another half of the CDC that's still private. And I'm going to tell you that this is going to suck, but coronavirus and this entire pandemic and all the stuff that we've been through, it ain't new. There are patents on the development of this that go all the way back to 1998 is when coronavirus goes back to 1998. And do you want to know who holds the patents on a lot of the development that went into coronavirus? The private side of the CDC. So now what do I have is I have a private entity that owns patents on a problem and also owns patents on the solution to
let's
the
talk
problem.
let's talk about something else. Or I'm going to expand on that exact thing. You can go back to it. Did you know that the company that makes your weed control spray, you go outside and you're like, these little weeds are popping up, I'm gonna and
Same
spray them down.
Same
parent company that owns that weed control company owns the patent and the large company that has the biggest. What am I trying to say? They own the company that has the most used or most effective heart medication.
Okay.
Okay, so the company that will kill your dandelions and all your weeds owns the company that makes and distributes the heart medication that all heart patients are given. Funny, one of the number one natural resources for heart health and circulatory regulation is a dandelion.
And so,
let's do the circle. Let's say this one more time.
and so when we say that this is a mafia-ocracy, that's literally, you have to start wrapping your head around what Darb just said is, so there is a plant that grows as a weed that if you would just ingest it, and know how to extract it, ingest it, whether you do it as a tea or a tincture or whatever, and a lot of people use them in salads, all kinds of stuff, that is actually extremely healthy for your heart, just naturally, just grows there. Now you have a company, and this all started 1920s and 30s. Rockefeller was really big and instrumental in a lot of this. Dow Chemicals, Rockefeller, DuPont, a lot of these very early, very wealthy families, and they all came from herbalism backgrounds. Their families all knew this stuff.
Yes.
And so, and this gets into a side note.
I think we talked about this once before. But
Yeah, this will get into a side note of what is witchcraft. So people a lot of times think it's a pointy hat and a lady flying around on a broom and all this stuff. What witchcraft is in the Bible is it's directly tied into rebellion. If you understand rebellious thinking. And so witchcraft and rebellion and the intent of your heart is what's going on. And so if I know that a plant is good for somebody or bad for somebody, if I have that knowledge and I use that knowledge to literally help that person, then I'm a healer. And if I use that same knowledge and I occult it, which means I hide it. That's literally what the definition for occult is. Occult is not, I mean, in a modern sense, you know, it's Anton LaVey and the Church of Satan and all that stuff, but literally what the meaning of occult is you know something that nobody else knows and you go out of your way to hide it from. Now, if I use that occulted knowledge and then I use it against someone's health or against someone's wishes or against them in some way to injure them, that is literally witchcraft. That is the biblical definition of witchcraft. And on top of that, these people also have, as part of their crooked, twisted little belief system, that if they jokingly or in some way, even as a fictionalized version of it, if they admit what they're doing to you, then they hold no guilt accountability upon themselves in the eyes of what they call karma. They have no karmic retribution coming back on themselves because you willingly agreed to it.
Yeah.
You had the opportunity to go, no, I'm not going to get on the death train. And you didn't. You went ahead and got on. Then they're scot-free and they think that they can continue doing it. And so what the Bible says is that my children perish for lack of knowledge. And so it is highly incumbent on us, because if he's the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, then that actually says something about our relationship. We actually have to start acting like kings and queens, and king and queen. That's someone that knows stuff. That's someone that takes responsibility for things. And so we're going to have to sit in that kind of seat to go, no, we're not going to play with the occulted stuff.
Makes you wonder, and I bet it's probably out there, because again, you know, they take things and they twist it. They take history and twist it. They take history and rewrite it, or they take history and they just eliminate parts from it. It makes you wonder about the Salem witch trials. All these women who were supposedly practicing witchcraft and eliminated for doing so by the religious folks of the day. What witchcraft do you really honestly think? I don't think they were in their bedroom or in their apothecary with a cauldron and I cast a spell upon your houses. No, I literally think they were probably
if
the
that
botanical herbalists of the day who were like, I can't afford to go to the doctor, or my doctor in my little village is an evil, horrible person because he's part of the good old boy network, and I'm going to treat my own family with what I have been passed down by generations. I know if I go eat this plant, drink this tea, do this thing, it'll take care of, cure, heal me.
Yes.
And they went, we can't have that because there's no money in healthcare. There's no money in the fact that you're not paying your local doctor hundreds of dollars for them to take care of you.
Yes.
Not. So they eliminated these witches for doing things that
or
were just natural.
Yeah.
Anyways.
And literally, what would be the modern equivalent of that? I don't know. Have you paid attention to all of the homeopathic doctors or just normal mainstream doctors
that are dropping dead all of a sudden or disappearing?
Because they're not going along with the pharmaceutical company narrative. And oh my God, they just happened to, I don't know, they died of a heart attack, or they died in a car crash, or they died in an airplane, or they were found dead in their bedroom, and oh, it was a suicide. They were shot 2 times in the back of the head. What? What?
That's not funny.
Come on, man. And this is, I mean, if you don't believe me, I think it's up to like 300 doctors.
Go look it up.
It was worldwide.
Go look it up.
Worldwide, and it started, about 4 or 5 years ago? And people have just gone, hey, this is really weird.
It's been going on for a long time, but and I'm sorry, I probably should have looked this up before we come on here, but about 2 years ago, there was a woman, and she was one of the first people to be popular with the anti-vax crowd women who came forward and was like, I'm in this field, and I can't remember if she was medical. I think she was medical and turned lawyer, or was lawyer and went, or she was hand in hand. Anyways, she was the first blogger or first lady to come out and go, there's something wrong with all of this.
Yeah, I can't
and
remember
she
the
talked
name.
about it, and then literally weeks before something happened, she came out and made a statement is like, ha ha ha, if something happens and I end up dead, I'm not suicidal. That's the first time we heard that. And I remember sitting on the couch in our living room, I think 2 years ago, and a girlfriend of mine who was heavily, heavily following all of this stuff, she texted me and she went, so-and-so was dead, she killed herself. And we were like, what? And then you heard about it real kind of hot and heavy for a minute, and they don't talk about her anymore because she was like, if you dug into it, you're going to start peeling back the layers of the onion that we've known has been going on for years. Because she literally was starting to come out with there's nothing wrong with your vaccines. Vaccines really aren't vaccines. Remember when we were kids, we were inoculated, not vaccine. What is a vaccine? And then poof, she was a single mom and was coming out. I think she was a recently single mother, and she was doing all this stuff for her kid, and her whole blog was about how I'm raising my child, and then bam, she kills herself and she's dead. Yeah.
And so we've kind of gone a little bit of far afield of what we were originally talking about with the keeping your supply chains for the vital things that you need. Food, medicine is definitely part of this, but the big thing is you're going to have to wake up. You're going to have to wake up to the fact that there are forces who do not like us, the United States. They don't like the Constitution. They don't like our freedoms. They don't like the way of life that we have. And they are purposefully doing things to undermine it. And they're not just coming straight out and fighting us. They're doing these really sneaky, long-term attacks that they try to get us to buy into by fooling us into believing that we're doing something good. And I don't know. It's but you have to get to that point.
Yeah.
You got to get to that point first. Otherwise, it gets really hard.
The best example that I have, and I teach this in my herbalism classes I talk about, it's not really herbalism, but it all kind of goes hand in hand, is years and years and years ago, back when our grandparents were preserving food, and they would grow a garden, and they would pluck their garden, they would eat as much as they could, and then they would preserve it by canning it, which is like pickling it, or just putting it in a solution where it makes it shelf stable for years.
Salt and dry meat,
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Oh,
yeah.
they didn't have a refrigerator system, so if you didn't have a root cellar, like I don't think here in the South we have a lot of cellars, but what they would do is they would dig a hole in the ground, they would shove their jars of food in there, and it kept it cool, and that was a system of preservation.
Yeah, about 6-7 feet down stays a constant.
And you would
55.
have people who were in your local, less than 100-mile, but in your town, you had one guy, you had a mercantile. And you had one guy that supplied your mercantile with milk because he literally sent his kids or his milkmaid. They really had milkmaids back then. They would send their person out there to milk the cow, they ran it through filters. It would come out of the cow.
Milk the cow.
That's really bad on video, so shut up. But they would milk it into a bucket. They would take that bucket and run it through a filter. The filter once it was come through the filter, they would clean out the best they could. They put it in the bottle. They screwed the top on, and they drove it down to the local mercantile. And the mercantile would send in the newspaper, "We have local milk today or this week." It wasn't an everyday thing. So that's how you got your milk. And then same thing, that's how you got your vegetables or your flour or your sugar. It wasn't like you watch an old Western. Hell, well, that's how it was done. So like I was saying, the best example is milk. What happened is milk it was popularity. It was a luxury, but then it became a regular thing. Why? Because they used the process of pasteurization. And I'm not an expert in this, but I know the ins and outs, so I'm just going to do a quick and dirty fast why local really, really is important. Pasteurization, especially of milk, is the idea of taking that and preserving it, pasteurizing to make it shelf stable. Sounds great, right? Sounds great.
Yeah.
You want it. You want your things shelf stable. You want to have things that aren't going to kill you. So what they do is, Farmer John has a cow. Farmer John has 40,000 cows, and he milks his cows and puts them in the bucket. Farmer John, because of law, mandate, whatever it is, alphabet agency, they say that Farmer John can't just sell his milk anymore. It's got to be pasteurized because it's got to go to the grocery store. And farmers make a decent amount of money by selling their milk in bulk now. So
and this also goes on with early ideas about science, and this goes back to scientific understanding that we had 70, 80 years ago about what we thought was going on with health and microbiology, and we're stuck in a system that is literally ruled by the past.
Yeah.
Because we're learning things about health and microbiology that the people back then didn't know.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead.
So Farmer John milks his cows.
Yeah.
And it goes into a vat. We're just going to call it a vat. Well, because the federal regulatory system has said that he can't just sell it direct anymore because, for whatever reason, you can go look that up, all that research. So Farmer John has to take those vats and put them into a refrigerated truck. This is all, think about it health-wise, think about it local to national, think about it economically for this farmer. Thousands of dollars being spent. He has to put it on a truck, all these things on a truck, and send that milk to a facility. Now I'm going to just stop here and say this. There are 50 states, 48 continental with
in CONUS, yeah.
There are 8. There may be more now, but with all the research I've done for years, there are 8 facilities in the United States that process dairy for every grocery store or who sells milk, sour cream, butter. 8. So think about it. 4 corners of the United States, all the middle states, 8 facilities. So say Farmer John is in Washington.
Yep.
And his nearest facility that he's got to send his milk from that just came out of the cow
Colorado, let's
to
say.
we'll say with Colorado. Well, that milk then goes from this facility to the place in Colorado, and that place in Colorado does what's called the pasteurization process, or the hydrogenization and pasteurization process, where they take that milk, which has all the live bacteria. I'm sorry, that's my dog, and I love her. Anyways, they take that milk, which has all the live bacteria, and all the live probiotics and all the live prebiotics, and they take it to this place where that's stripped out. Now, understand, why do they do this? Because I think 110 years ago, I can't remember the year. Again, this is, I know I sound like a crazy person, but you can take my craziness and go look it up.
All of us need to start doing our own homework.
Yes.
No, and this is the same way we run our church the same way.
Yeah.
Every soldier is responsible for cleaning their own rifle. It's not my job to clean your rifle.
No.
It's your job to clean your rifle.
Take my information and go look it up. But they found years ago a dog. Oh my God, I love her. They found years ago that there was a strain of bacteria in these cows that
They
were
associated
eating
it
a
with-
certain type of food, that bacteria could make you sick. Could probably be, I'm not sure it was be fatal, but it could make you sick. So they have eliminated it. Well, they pasteurize it and they kill everything in that living organism, because dairy, milk, is a living organism. And they strip it out and they kill it to eliminate one strain of bacteria. So what happens after that? Well, once that's been filtered and cleaned and everything has been removed, that dairy product is rendered inert. Well, that facility can't bottle the milk from there, because that facility in Colorado strictly is just the pasteurization and hydrogenization process. So they put all that milk back into clean
refrigerated truck
vats and stick it onto, back up. Again, this facility in Colorado is just one of 8. So I'm sure Farmer John has sent his milk, and the facility has got to deal with
cover that at the end.
Farmer Max and Farmer Bob and Farmer Jim and Farmer Sue. So it's sitting refrigerated until their time comes to go through this process. Well, once that facility takes care of that, like I said, they can't sell it. So they vat it back up and send it back to Farmer John. So it gets on a refrigerated truck and it goes back to, however long it takes to get there, back to the farmer. Well, again, hi, thanks USDA. Farmer John can't legally bottle his own milk. He just is the producer of the
raw
dairy
products, yeah.
So then he's got to take it from off that refrigerated truck, put it on another refrigerated truck, and send it to the bottling facility. I don't know how many of those are, but he sends it to a place where they bottle it. Because the processor can't just send it to the bottler. It's got to go back to the guy. So the guy, now the farmer, processor, farmer, bottler. I'm sure that bottler is doing it for multiple people, so there it sits in a refrigerated section, waits to get bottled, and it's bottled.
And then it goes
to
the
bottling
store.
Facility can't, no, the bottling facility isn't in contract with these stores. So they bottle it all up, and they send it back to Farmer John.
Or
whoever distributor that they're contracted with.
Yeah.
But that's like whole nother trip.
And
so then it goes,
yeah.
hang on.
Okay.
Then it goes back to the Farmer John or wherever. Well, then Farmer John has got to go, okay, I've got to send it to Safeway, Albertsons, Ralph's, Whole Foods, Aldi's, Costco, blah, blah, blah. It's got to go all these places. So it gets on another truck, and it goes to all these distributors of these grocery stores. Well, Safeway, Aldi's, Albertsons, Costco has all this milk that they're already selling in the grocery store currently. So all this new milk that is coming in is sitting in a refrigerated area in the distributorship waiting to go onto the shelves at the grocery store. And if you notice, when you go to the grocery store, you buy a gallon of milk and it says, I bought it today, April 28th, and my milk is good till September 5th, which seems like a long time. You're like, wow, this is great. Please understand, the whole point of this is the milk that you're buying today at the grocery store on August 28th, and my date says stamped, this milk is good, used by September 5th, we'll say, has probably been sitting in wait in venue for up to 8 weeks.
Okay, now listen, because, and I'm gonna, how long it took her to explain that.
Sorry.
Okay, well, no, I'm just saying, how long it took her to explain that. We're all sitting here kind of going,
Okay,
oh
Darb,
my God.
shut up.
Oh my God. How long is it going to take? Now imagine if you're the molecules of the milk
Mm-hmm.
and you're having to sit there, and at each point in this process, you're having to wait all of that time. And on top of that, they've stripped everything live out of it. Now, just real quick, we all know that you are what you eat. So if you're eating a bunch of dead stuff, do you think that you're actually getting the nutrition as it was originally engineered to actually be given to you?
Technically, it's not dead anymore because I forgot this part. Sorry, it's taken so long.
Yeah.
That when they strip it all out at the processor,
yeah,
because they had to kill the one strain of bacteria that could possibly make you or little Molly Joe sick, they have to kill it all. Well, you can't just send it back because it's dead, and dead things rot and go bad. So what they have to do is implement and add back things that would be a preservation. They have to pasteurize it. Okay. How do they do that? Well, they add back good bacteria, which is why you see on your cartons of milk, especially in the organic market, you'll see your carton that says, this milk is full of omega-3 and this special vitamin D3, and it has this stuff, and there's no hormones and no bacteria, but it has all these things. Why? Because they have artificially added back things that should be good for you into the milk before they send it off to get bottled, because you can't sell a dead item. How do you preserve dairy? How do you put sugar? And thousands upon thousands of pounds of sugar is what is preserving your milk. That's why when you go buy whole milk and you're looking, you're like, oh, this has got vitamin D. Oh, and it's got 23 grams of sugar.
26 on a lot of them.
Did you know?
It's like a soda.
That if you go out to your, I'm farm dairy and I have a cow and I'm going out to and I'm going to milk Daisy May and I'm going to get my milk and put it in the bucket and I'm going to run it through, because you're going to get a little sieve and put it through your filtration system, and then I'm going to put it in a glass and I drink it. There's no sugar?
Very, very little sugar.
The sugar is because maybe you're feeding your cattle
certain types of food.
Hay and lots of red clover and sainfoin, which, I would love to talk to you about that, which has got natural sugars in it. That's it. And it's sweet.
Yeah.
It's not going to give me diabetes for drinking a glass of a whole milk.
And then we wonder why we have diabetes.
Yeah.
It's because a lot of the foods that we're eating are not natural. They're not.
Yeah, and that was the whole point of my thing, was that.
Yeah, they're not in their live state.
Pasteurization is the easiest way to explain them literally killing us with stuff that they have told us is good for us.
And some of that, I'm gonna back this up too. Some of that at the very, very top. There's studies going back to 1910, 1915. I hate to tell you this, but the people at the very top of some of these industries, especially 30s, 40s, in the time frame that they were setting up these systems, they knew exactly what the fuck they were doing.
Oh, yeah.
They knew. The people today have been sold a bill of goods through, like the AMA with the doctors and all of the schools, the university systems that we see today. These were all Rockefeller, DuPont, Dow Chemical funded institutions. These were all the same big businesses that have garnered total control of all of these food industries. They're the same people that are teaching the people, this is what health is. And what we're finding out is that people are, there's all kinds of diseases that are just diabetes. People did not die from diabetes 300 years ago the way people are dying of diabetes today.
People were dying from diabetes 40 years ago, like people are dying from it today.
There are records when you go back into the 1800s and they talk about cancer deaths. We're up to I want to say 40 or 45% total mortality on cancer as a natural cause of death. They're talking about in the mid 1800s, cancer was less than 3% of deaths. And so we're seeing massive increases in all kinds of problems. But we go, oh, we have all this safe food. No, we have a lot of poison that we're ingesting as food. And just because we're eating a lot of it doesn't mean that we're healthy. For a big part of it, and this is a whole other thing, but with seed oils and stuff like that, it's turning us into a bunch of fat fucks.
Yeah.
And it's not even fat that our body can get rid of. And I'm going to tell you, I'm 50 years old and I work out a fair amount, and there's some fat that I'm finding is incredibly hard for my body to go through. And it's because, well, God, for 50 years I've ingested, thinking that it was healthy,
olive oil.
And olive oil is one of the betters, but canola, oh my God.
Yeah, you don't want to eat vegetable oil and margarine, and
horrible for you.
So you ate canola oil, which was told you which is healthy. And back to diabetes. Here's quick. Did you know that in Thailand, and mainly the Philippines, they don't have a type 2 diabetic problem? Now, type 1, you were born with. There is a strain of diabetes, which is you are just born with it. Type 2 is a diabetes that you get from an overabundance of unhealthy eating habits, too much sugar, too much this or the other thing. Well, they don't have that issue, and they are regulating and helping their type 1 diabetic people. Why? Because they ingest this tea, this miraculous tea called Banaba tea. Well, here's a little history lesson. Back in the 1800s, some British sailor was over there and had this tea and noticed that because it took weeks and weeks and weeks to travel from where they were over to the Philippines, and his peoples, they fed them well because they were royalty. It was a prince, I think it was. Fed his people on his ship well, but his people on his ship were getting really, really ill and sick. And they were feeding them wine and cheese and all these rich foods. And he went over and they ingested this tea while they were there, and they noticed that their people weren't as sick. They were getting better. Well, this Banaba tea that they drink over there just on the regular is literally, it's a regulatory herb. It knows that when you drink this tea, your body goes, I have too much high sugar, and this tea regulates your blood glucose and your blood sugar. But it also, in the same plot twist, it goes, oh, my sugar has dropped. Like if you're diabetic and you're like, I need to slam a glass of juice because my sugar levels will drop. This tea keeps your body in check. You don't deal with that.
Yeah.
So remember, Banaba, great. Philippines have been doing it since the Philippines have been around. Do you know what the Banaba tree is?
No, but you broke my remote.
If you are from the southern states, Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, it's an ornamental tree that has Carolyn clutching her pearls because it is a bane of women in their teetotaling daughters of the American Revolution, and the cotillions talk about how if you don't cut back your crepe myrtle trees, then this, it makes your yard look horrible. So the biggest argument is, are crepe myrtles to be cropped or let grow because they're beautiful? Damn it, people, Banaba leaf is the leaf of the crepe myrtle tree that you're growing in your backyard that your Aunt Geraldine and mother and grandmother grew because it won them all of their garden awards.
Yeah.
Go pluck the leaves, dry them, and drink the tea, and see if you're a diabetic, and watch your numbers
get corrected. Yeah.
And go look this up. People in the Philippines drink this tea with a high A1C number, and they see results in 60 minutes.
And so,
I have 4 of the trees in my backyard.
And so, again,
occultish. They have hidden this information from you they know it. Yep. They know it. Here's another one. Daffodils. Sorry, but it's important.
I know, but we're getting into.
Well, then I'll save that. I'll save that for a different time because that's another one. But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. I think the really important thing is to start to draw you've got to dig into it. And so when this whole thing started for us, we realized that we were going to have problems with being able to get a hold of medicines and really being able to trust. It was like when we sat down, we were kind of like, okay, well, how are we getting our food? How are we getting our medicine? How are we doing this stuff? And then because of COVID, it was like, holy crap, can you even trust some of these sources? You literally had the CDC coming along and going, oh, you gotta totally trust us. And then we were hit with that problem of, holy crap, they own both the problem and the solution. These guys are the fire department that's getting paid to put out fires that they actually went and lit themselves.
Yeah.
And I went, oh my God, that's a circular problem. And the more we dug into all this stuff, we started to see circular problems. And those circular problems were all tied into supply chain. And all of us are dependent to some degree or another on a supply chain. You need toilet paper. If you don't have toilet paper, life gets pretty difficult pretty quick.
Brings us all the way back around to the very beginning of this podcast. I talked about we have a local meat butcher in town that we felt really good about because we were shopping local and supporting our local meat shop. Well, it wasn't until maybe just a little over a year ago, I was talking to the gentleman who has taken over the ranching business from generations, and he's like, you guys know that they're great folk, but their meat is not local.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do you mean their meat isn't local? They go, no, they're not regulated to sell local beef. Nobody's by law, Georgia law, or it may be federal, I don't know.
I think it goes back to USDA, but yeah.
They can't sell local processed beef in their store, so they get the highest cut of beef available, but it's coming off the Cisco truck or the American food truck. Basically, it's the same meat that you're getting at Walmart. Or Harvey's or Costco.
They cut it, but
some they cut, but it's like, it crushed me. And they're great. I still go there. They do sell local produce.
Yeah.
They do sell. They are really great on carrying like local jams and jellies and sauce, barbecue sauce and things of that nature that people will make. But I was like, man, I thought I was making all these great decisions shopping local for my items, and still they're being regulated to the nth degree and they can't carry it. So take a day. It's not going to be something you're going to find instantaneously, but dedicate like a day or so to get on the computer or go to your library or talk to your neighbors and your friends. It's okay to talk to people and go, I'm looking for local beef, specifically ground beef or chuck. And somebody's going to say, oh,
so-and-so.
Michael Stevens, fake name, up the road, he's a rancher. He does it. Now remember, by law, you can't, it's a stupid law, you can't raise the cattle and package it in the same facility, but you can send it off and have it done locally.
And this is, we're gonna.
But you'll know that your cow, like I said, I can drive down the road and wave at him because he's always on his pasture, and know that little black cow over there in 6 months is going to be in my barbecue.
And when she says by law, I'm gonna reiterate real quick. Is it really law? Was it passed by Congress? Or did someone in a 3-letter agency just make up policy? And then if you don't follow the policy, they show up at your house to enforce policy. Again, if you're not in the police department, you don't have to follow department policy. No. If now, do you have to follow the law? Yeah. But what is law? And so we've got to get back to some of these things. And who is it incumbent upon to do that? Us. We have to do that.
Yeah. You have to know where your food comes from.
Yeah.
You have to know where your medication comes from. You have to know where your insert any resource, know where that comes from, because you are the only person outside of God above that is responsible for yourself, your wife or husband, and your children, and those you are taking care of. We can no longer spend our life going, well, I just didn't know. You have to know. Yeah. You have to know. And if you choose to live in ignorant bliss, then you will choose to accept the consequences that are coming down the road at a rapid pace.
And so, and then the other thing I'll add to that is once you find one line, multiply your lines. Don't just have one line to beef. Have
like
a
you said,
couple of
because
lines.
what if Farmer John has dairy cows and Farmer John something happens to his cows because people get sick or he stops milking for a while. Well, then Farmer John, and you know what? There has to stop being competition within fields. I'm sure, especially here, and I've noticed this, if Farmer John is milking cows and he's run out of milk, Farmer John absolutely will go, well, Darb, I don't have it, but if you go talk to Farmer Sue, she's picking up where I left off. And you go, wow, that's great.
Competition can be
Friendly.
can be adversarial. Okay. No, I don't.
Wow, I think our power went out, so sorry that it was very abruptly. That was exciting, though.
That was weird.
So I don't know. I can't remember where it could be wrong. I can't wait to see what our faces look like.
Yeah, totally. We should have come back like. Oh, and we're
Anyways,
back. Okay.
Local is accessible if you just take the time to find it.
Redundancy. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Build in redundancy. Make sure that you just have redundant lines to everything.
And we were talking about complementary. There shouldn't be.
Yeah, complementary competition.
Yeah. If you're going to have one egg resource, have 5. If you're going to have one guy that you get your pork from, have 2. If you're going to get your beef from one rancher, find multiple ranchers.
And to a degree, you're going to have to spread a big part of this is it's not just the physical; it's also the spiritual part of this.
Mm-hmm.
If you're producing a product, understand that when you're doing that, and some people aren't going to understand this, but the things that you do are not just about you. It's not just about the little kingdom or the fiefdom that you build. It's actually about how you serve the boss, and how you ultimately serve the boss is by taking care of your neighbor. And so when you're putting forth a business, it's not always about dominating the entire industry.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the domination of things is actually why
we're at now.
Gotten in a lot of problems.
Undercutting, and I've got to do it better, and by doing it better, I'm going to cut corners, and by cutting corners, my product is less quality, but you're paying. But you want to think it's better quality because, it's a nightmare.
And trying to be the top dog at the end of the day and gobble up everything. And that's not the way to look at this. People need to understand that they're all part of a kingdom, and that you may have a corner in that kingdom, but other people are going to be in the same industry and they're going to have their corner.
Yeah.
And the one who ultimately is going to judge the quality of the product and does your particular business get to remain in your corner of the kingdom is the boss.
Yeah.
And so we need to mind our own business. And so in minding your own business, you can have complementary competition.
Do you remember?
I can raise cows, and I can be friends with another guy that's raising cows.
Yeah.
And we don't have to.
No, because you can
adversarial.
raise cows, and that guy can raise cows, and you could call up and go, Jim.
Yeah.
I ran out of hay. My cows are starving, and Jim's going to go, man, I will bring you some hay over, because Jim may need to call you in 5 weeks and go, man, my tractor's down. Can I borrow your tractor? That's just the way of life, and we've gotten away from that.
And we need to get back to
remember, what was that Christmas movie where Santa Claus they had preview with Santa Claus, Miracle on 34th Street, and it was just a minuscule part of that, but what has always stuck with me is that Santa Claus was, all the little kids are sitting on his lap and telling them they want this doll, and that Santa Claus was like, well, the store I work at doesn't carry it, but if you go to the guy across the street, they do. And Mr. Macy, who
in the movie,
when Macy's was really first started, they really were that kind of company. I don't know. I don't shop there now, so I don't know what they really are like now. But they really.
Okay, well, this is technical difficulty
number 3.
57.
So we're going to call it a day, and we'll. You got the basic gist. We love you.
Okay, if you have any questions, hit us up. Other than that, we're good.
Bye. How dumb.
Oh my God, dude. I'm going to have to cut and chop.
mean old casino. Cleaned my pants and hung 'em out to dry. Drown the town of Reno, leave the lights on, let 'em die.